John Wayne Gacy, Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, Charles Manson, Robert Lee Yates, and Aileen Wuornos are some of the most notorious serial killers in the United States. What is their desire to kill? How did they turn into these horrific monsters? Is there such thing as a killer gene? Well, scientists are now analyzing what can cause people to become violent criminals. Jim Fallon, the scientist, not the TV show host, taught neuroscience and psychiatry grand rounds at University of California, Irvine for 35 years. In a TED Talk in July 2009, he explains in his presentation that there is a gene called MAOA, which is also called the warrior gene, which can cause people to become aggressive. According to the Genetic Literacy Project, the so-called warrior gene comprises particular variations in the X chromosome gene that produces monoamine oxidase, an enzyme that affects the neurotransmitters dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. This gene is only carried by the female on the X chromosome, which only transfers to the son. Daughters will still receive an X chromosome from the mother, but will also receive an X chromosome from the father, which will dilute the chances of getting the MAOA gene. The MAOA gene, to express itself, the person has to experience traumatic events at a very young age. Not just a butt smack or being grounded, but actually seeing violence or being involved in it. For this to get passed down from mother to son, there has to be an abundance of serotonin during development. This can cause insensitivity to serotonin, which is supposed to make us calm and relaxed. Now, scientists are starting to examine serial killers' brains to analyze if there's a difference between their brains and a normal person's brain. Scientist Jim Fallon examined brains of serial killers and murderers. He discovered that they all had damage to the orbital cortex, which is right above the eyes, and also parts of the anterior part of the temporal lobe. These were the patterns that they all had, but they also had their differences. They had other sorts of brain damage in other areas as well. The function of the orbitofrontal cortex is in charge of cognitive processing of decision-making. People who have brain damage in the orbitofrontal cortex tend to be very impulsive. This makes it very difficult for people to make good decisions and know right from wrong, which is very key to have in life. When serial killers commit these crimes, they do not process if it is good or bad. They will impulsively commit the crime no matter any consequences. As we see here, there are distinct differences between a normal brain and the brain of a psychopath. The amygdala, which is located deep inside the brain, is severely underdeveloped in the psychopath's brain. The amygdala is responsible for detecting fear and preparing for emergency events. Since this part of the brain is underdeveloped, the psychopath does not have fear of anything and does not panic in emergency situations. What we can also analyze is the medial prefrontal cortex is also underdeveloped. The medial prefrontal cortex function is not factually known. Many people think it is responsible for decision-making, and others believe it is involved in the retrieval of long-term memory. Either way, the excessive damage to the medial prefrontal cortex in the psychopath's brain impacts them in a certain way. Even though brain damage is important to know why a person is the way they are, looking into their childhood is key for finding information about the killer. Infancy is one of the important stages of development. It is a time when the personality begins to develop. The first year is crucial to the development of emotions such as affection or remorse. If the infant does not receive attention and physical touch during this time period, they may suffer from personality disorders in the future. In fact, there may be signs that the child has a psychopathic personality by the age of 2. Even though infancy is one important factor, early childhood is key for the information of a serial killer. During this period, serial killers were abandoned by their peers, while also dealing with stuttering and learning problems such as dyslexia. While having these disabilities, it increases the chances of being a victim of bullying. While experiencing bullying, many serial killers will start to have secret aggressive fantasies. According to Psychology Today, fantasy serves to relieve anxiety or fear, and most people have them to one extent or another. Although some fantasy in childhood is normal, it can become a compulsive form of escapism in children who are abused, neglected, or otherwise traumatized. Many serial killers have admitted to trauma and daydreaming fantasies during their childhood. For example, Ed Kemper, the co-ed killer, who was severely abused when he was a child by his mother, and has said, I knew long before I started killing that I was going to be killing, that it was going to end up like that. The fantasies were too strong. They were going on for too long and were too elaborate. Child trauma has an impacting effect on serial killers. Numerous studies have proven that support the idea that mental and physical trauma may have a drastic effect on an individual throughout their lifetime. 42% of convicted serial killers suffered from physical abuse as children, and 74% suffered from psychological abuse. Sexual abuse also seemed to be popular in serial killers. 35% witnessed sexual abuse, and 43% were sexually abused. The complications of these events help psychologists believe that their psychopathic behavior is actually a form of defense mechanism. With all this information that scientists and psychologists have discovered, it seems that becoming a serial killer is influenced by genes that may be passed down from the parents. The genes do not define someone as a serial killer, however, but it plays a role. While having that MAOA gene, experiencing different types of trauma can cause the aggressive fantasies to become reality. Even though psychologists believe that the brain is putting up a defense mechanism, does not make their actions tolerable.